for that, but it is kind of odd. And then, of course, the Dallas Morning News story. So, today, the best debunking argument today is that since you can't deny that the stories were in the Dallas and Fort Worth papers, now the debunkers say, well, it was just a hoax story. Just planted in the newspaper to draw attention to Aurora because it had been bypassed by the railroad, and they wanted, you know, people to start noticing Aurora. Well, okay, that makes some sense, and I listened to that seriously for a good number of years, until about 3 or 4 years ago, when I went and got the entire front page of the Dallas Morning News for April the 19th, 1897. Right in the middle of the page is a little article about Aurora, windmill demolishes it. These two columns over here are nothing but ads, and then all the rest of the columns, there are 16 stories on this front page, and they came from correspondence. Let me explain this to you. Back in 1897, newspapers were not an operating business. Usually the newspaper was put out by the local printer who had a printing press, and they certainly didn't have the money to hire staffs of reporters. So what they had was what they call correspondence. I know this because in the 1960s, when I attended North Texas University, I got to get it right, it was the University of North Texas then. Now it's North Texas University. No, it's the other way around. See, I'm still confused, and I still haven't figured this one out. So I went to North Texas University, but now it's the University of North Texas. Okay, whatever. I also worked for the Denton Record Chronicle. What was my job? Opening the letters from the correspondents from all the surrounding little bitty towns, and then I would put their information all together in the news columns that went into the Record Chronicle. History, Mrs. Sam Bloomford visited relatives in Dallas last weekend. A good time was had by all. All that important stuff. And also covered sports. So see, it wasn't even in the 1800s, as far up till 1960s, and probably even maybe still today. A lot of the times that the smaller newspapers get their information is through their correspondence. So all of these 16 stories came not from some professional staff, but from correspondents from all of these various towns. And these towns, these stories range from southern Oklahoma to almost Austin, Texas. And they're all talking about the silver cigar-shaped object flying through the skies. Here's another one I like. Wortham, Freestone County, Texas, April 13th. Captain John A. Lilly, a prominent and reliable citizen of this place, a Mexican war veteran, claims he saw the mysterious airship last night at 9:30. He said it was going straight up. Oops, that leaves out a meteor, doesn't it? I've never seen a meteor go straight up. So, the whole front page, which by the way, I have some copies of these back there if anybody wants to buy one. I'll sell you one for $1. I gotta pay for my gasoline to get it. And then these stories are all in there. And some of these stories you're going to find real interesting because at least 2 of the stories, no, 3 of them I think, are the accounts of people who said they actually encountered the thing. It was on the ground and they talked to the crew. In fact, this is not in my presentation because it was in the microfilm of the old Fort Worth Record, and I could kick myself for not, I went back looking for the Aurora spaceship crash and I found all these other stories. For example, there's a story from a little town out just west of here, and it was quoting the town mayor, the judge, police chief, you know, reputable, credible members of the town, and they said they saw this thing going over at speeds in excess of 100 miles an hour. Well, of course, that doesn't sound like much to us today, but let me tell you, in those same newspapers was a big article about a new train service that they were getting ready to institute up in the Northeast, and they said they would attain speeds greater than 40 miles an hour. And right there with this notice was a big article citing prominent medical authorities who in 1897 said The human body cannot withstand speeds greater than 40 miles an hour. So when these people said that something went over going more than 100 miles an hour, that would be the equivalent of us saying something went over there and is going more than 1,000 miles an hour. You know, it's just going faster than anything they could even conceive of. But the story that really got me, and when you read these stories about these encounters with the crew and of this airship, and the stories change. One story, they were told that this was developed in a secret lab in New York, and that they took it out for a spin, and the next thing you know, they were over Kansas, and they said, "Oh, we're really working great, let's go on down to Texas." Another story said that they came from a hidden civilization at the North Pole, but the common denominator among these stories is they all said, "Don't tell anybody that you've seen us. This is a secret mission." And of course, these people they told it to, first thing they did was run to town and tell the correspondent, "Guess what I saw?" But the one that really got me, and I think this may give us a little bit of insight into the reality of the UFOs. But before I tell you this, let me explain something to you. If you've read any of the UFO literature, you'll know that when the UFO comes over, the cars stop. Oh, thank you. There's a message to remind us all to turn off our cell phones. And come think of it, I think I'll do the same thing. Appreciate that. So we all know that when the UFO comes over, the car stops, right? And when the UFO goes away, the car starts again. Except, think about it. Nobody ever says, turn on the ignition and the car started. No, it just stopped, and then the UFO goes away and it starts again. Well, this tells us that, and what we are now finding out and realize, and I'm in touch with some very, very cutting-edge, prominent physicists and scientists, we are dealing with energy fields here. And when you can create an energy field that cancels out gravity, then we are finding that gravity and time are interconnected. So in other words, when the energy field comes into play and the UFO is hovering overhead, then time within that energy field has stopped. So the pistons in your car doesn't turn off, they just stop. And when the energy field goes away, they go back to banging. And I had this tentatively confirmed to me because I was talking about this one night, I think on Coast to Coast. And I got an email from a truck driver. He said, "Well, I'm not sure about that." He said, "Me and my buddy was driving our trucks, and we saw this UFO, and it came right over and said, but our trucks didn't stop." So I wrote him back, and I said, "Well, yeah, but you were probably driving diesels, weren't you?" And he said, "Yeah." Well, diesels run on compressed gas. They don't run on electrical current like cars do. So to me, that confirmed the whole thing. So the electric stopped, all right? So now all of a sudden we've got a whole added thing here, which is time. And if you'll think about it, those of you who've read the literature of the UFO researchers and experiencers, they talk about missing time. They say, "Well, I saw this UFO at 6 o'clock and I didn't get home till 7, but my house is only 10 minutes away." Missing time. That's because when they're in the energy field, time has stopped for them. And this also explains some of these people who claim to have been abducted. And they say, you know, I went to bed and I saw these things in my room, the next thing I know I'm back in my bed, but then they tell this whole long story about how they were taken here and taken there and put on the table and did all this stuff. Well, that's because they brought them back pretty quick to the time they took them, and there's missing time in there. So we've got time involved here. And so this leads me to the next story that I saw,